Hi friends, I'm Dave with Dave and Jen Ignite, and we are up for a challenge today. I'm in this group called Fight Club, and no, it's not that movie Fight Club, but it is a challenge, and they challenge you in 4 areas, and one of them is one that has been dear to my heart for a long time, and that's scripture memorization. So today we're going to work on memorizing 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Now the challenge is it's lengthy and it takes some focus. So here, let's get to it. And by the end of this time, you'll have what it needs to memorize these 2 verses. I'm not going to say you have them memorized by the time we get done with this, just that you'll have what you need to get the job done. So let's take a look at the verse. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Therefore, stop. What's the therefore? Therefore. Go back and read the end of chapter 3 of 1 Peter, and you're going to see some of the suffering of Christ. But that's important to understand why we're going to do this. Therefore, because of what happened there, what we read about in chapter 3, now this. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Yes, it's long, so let's break it into segments. That will help us. There's a clue. There's a hint. Let's break it into segments. So we'll take a look at it overall again one more time. Notice that, therefore, since Christ suffers in his body, the word body is going to show up twice here. Arm yourselves. Okay. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, part of my body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude. Whew. Attitude makes a difference. We'll put a card above about a specific message on attitude. Arm yourselves with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. I'm just done with it. Boy, won't that be great. Let's just go back over that. Again, we have to do this one in segments. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. Let's work on that first verse again. That's the end of verse 1. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. Hey, we're getting there, aren't we? You're starting to catch on to it. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. Yes. Let's go over it one more time. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. Begin to sink in. Obviously, you still need to write this down. That helps your brain. It's kinetic learning. It helps your brain to register these words, and there are a lot of words, so we want to get that. Here's the attitude we want to pick up. A willingness to suffer in our earthly bodies. In our bodies. Whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. You know, we're blessed where we live anyway to not, at this time in our history, suffer because we're following Jesus Christ. At least not significantly. Verse 2. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. All right. Because of this, as a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Let's do that second half again, that second verse. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. once again, as a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. There's that contrast at the end. When you see that little word but, contrast, and this even emphasizes it a little more with but rather for the will of God. Well, this is a verse that is probably going to require you to grab that 3x5 card and grab that coin and practice the four-sided coin. We'll put a link to that video up there as well. Start at the top, heads up. Just read it. 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. 1 Peter 4:10. Place the coin to the right. Just read it. Read it again. Place it to the bottom. Just read it. Read it again. It's a longer verse. It's going to take a while to sink in. Place it to the left. Just read it. Now we're going to turn the coin over so it's tails. Now you try and read what you can without looking at it. You turn it over. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, okay, help. Turn it over. Go to the side. Turn it back over. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude. That's as far as I got that time. All right, let's go on. Okay, same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body. Okay. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude. No. And just keep going. It's okay. It's going to take time. This is a lengthy verse. Give yourself some grace. Work on it. Work on it. Work on it. You'll find some other creative things to do. I know you will. Some of you, put your comments below on what you find that helped you with this particular set of verses, 2 verses. You may want to put it on that post-it and put it on the refrigerator or put it on your computer screen. Whatever works for you, just helps to memorize it. Whatever can help you memorize it. And hopefully by the time next week rolls around, you'll have this one down. I think you will. Well, if you're finding some value in this, please click like, subscribe, and ring that bell on the notifications so that you can find out when other videos come out. Until we get to see each other again, and I'll be working on this one for a while. God bless you.